When you finished S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 for the first time, you probably thought, what the hell just happened? I know it was the case for me and for a lot of other people, regardless of the ending we got or our prior knowledge of the series. That's because the endings of Heart of Chernobyl are meant to be confusing, to make you think and doubt your choices. Indeed, the story of the game is designed in such a way that you'll need to replay all the different scenarios and search deep for hidden lore entries in order to piece everything together. So, in this video we will do just that. Welcome, stalkers, to this long overdue piece about the endings. Huge spoilers ahead, obviously, and let's begin. Before diving straight into the ending cutscenes, there are a lot of things we need to establish in order to understand everything better. The details from the game's story that needed to be addressed first were discussed in all my previous S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 lore videos, like a chain slowly building up to the endings at last, so I highly suggest watching them in order to get a better understanding of the story as a whole. Don't you worry though, I will recap the necessary elements in this video too. Firstly, we'll take a look at the main players on the game board and recap their background and motivations, for they are battling for no less than deciding the fate of the zone and the human race. During the game, Skif will quickly be introduced to two of the most powerful groups in the zone, Spark led by S.T.A.L.K.E.R and the Ward commanded by Colonel Korshunov. If you've played the game, I don't think they really need to be explained. The Ward protects the Scientific Institute for Research in the Chernobyl anomalous area, S.T.A.L.K.E.R for short, led by Dr. Dmytro Dalin. Their goal is pretty clear: to take control of the anomalous energy by achieving a connection to the generators located at the center of the zone, the implications of which we shall dive into later. As for Spark, its main purpose is simply to oppose the Ward and sabotage S.T.A.L.K.E.R's experiments, although we'll discover their true motives soon enough. What you might have missed is that both factions are actually working for higher powers that stem from the days of Project X, the secret research conducted in the zone before 2006 via the X laboratories. The beginnings of Project X remain unclear, but it seems it was originally a Soviet endeavor. However, when the Union fell in 1991, the government could not support Project X anymore, so its continuity was ensured by a mysterious benefactor organization called the Regulatory Board. Not much is known about the board apart from the fact that it is a very powerful worldwide entity interested in the anomalous energy. What we call anomalous energy is actually tied to the noosphere, the Earth's information field, the existence of which was proven by the scientists from Project X. For years, the researchers tried to connect to the noosphere in order to tap into its power and change the fate of humanity, but the immense stakes led to a group of scientists going rogue and pursuing their own goals. In Lab X7 at the generators, this group ran an unauthorized experiment during which the consciousnesses of 7 volunteers were connected to the noosphere, creating the entity known as the Common Consciousness. Its leader and representative is Valentin Dalin, who is actually Dmytro's father. C-Consciousness eventually took control of the remaining scientists from Project X under MDST, named after the Ministry of Defense and Secret Technologies. While the Regulatory Board wanted the power of the noosphere all for themselves, the goal of MDST became to modify the information field in order to improve the condition of humanity. However, the experiment failed, and instead resulted in the emergence of the anomalous zone. Originally, there was supposed to be 8 members joining C-Consciousness, but Dr. Kaimanov decided to bail out at the last moment, and even participated in the breakdown of the experiment by shooting at the variometer, a machine designed to enhance the Psi connection with the noosphere. Kaimanov managed to escape and will eventually become a crucial player into our story. Following the birth of the Zone in 2006 and the explosion of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R phenomenon in the following years, MDST created the Monolith faction in order to protect Psi consciousness and their secrets. At some point, Faust became the leader of the Monolith, using the powerful Psi abilities he acquired after being experimented on in Lab X5. MDST also created the Agents, stalkers programmed in the Neural Laboratory for specific missions. One of them was STRELOK, but something went wrong in his programming, and with the help of Kaimanov, STRELOK ended up killing the 7 bodies of the Psi consciousness scientists, opening the way for a new era in the Zone. That's when the Regulatory Board established the Ward and Circa as their subordinates, with the intent of taking back what they considered their own, with the whole operation being overseen by the mysterious Agatha. Yet it turns out that the minds of the Psi consciousness scientists somehow survived in a state called subtle matter, pure consciousness stored within the noosphere, though they could not influence the course of events anymore. In order to change that, the remaining members of MDST devised a plan, which began with the reprogramming of Scar's brainwashing. Scar, another former agent, was given orders that led him to take control of the Spark faction, activate the X network, and build a visiograph, as we saw during the main story of the game. To achieve this, he managed to convince Professor Ozerski, the director of STC Malachite, to covertly help Spark with their machinations. Now that subtle matter appeared to be real, the goal of Psi consciousness became to achieve the Shining, that is, bringing immortality within the noosphere for all of mankind. This was not compatible with the quest from the Ward, since taking control of the anomalous energy would mean destroying all subtle matter, hence why Spark was set up in complete opposition to the Ward. Meanwhile, Kaimanov had become an hermit called the Doctor, but he actually worked on his own plan for the future of the Zone, the so-called Project Y. The idea behind Project Y came from a different perspective of the Zone. Kaimanov believed that if the Zone was set free and treated with compassion rather than put in a cage and dealt with as a threat, like it always had been, then it could blossom and help start a new age for humanity. Somehow there is a strong connection between Kaimanov and Faust, with the latter trying to go through with Project Y when he brought the Monolith back with his own free will. And finally we have STRELOK, who didn't agree with any of the other sides and decided that his purpose was to defend the Zone at all costs. For this, he hired the services of mercenaries, and also collaborated with Degtyaryov's corps at some point, although he mostly remained independent and alone in the pursuit of his goal, protecting the Zone by eliminating everyone else and locking her down. Now that we've recapped all of this, we can move on to the role played by Skif. During the storyline, we discovered that the 8th pod that was supposed to host Kaimanov at the generators is still intact, and thanks to the advances in technology, could be used by a single person to connect to the noosphere. This is the ticket for all the factions to achieve their goal, but only one will benefit from it. In every ending, a specific person will enter the pod: Korshunov to control the anomalous energy, Scar to salvage the second Chernobyl disaster, STRELOK to contain the Zone, and Skif to embrace her. Indeed, in my opinion, the finality of Heart of Chernobyl is to answer the question, what to do with the Zone. Each ending represents a different way to finish Project X and deal with the consequences of the second Chernobyl disaster. For me, this is what the second chapter of the S.T.A.L.K.E.R series is about. Also, I did not choose the words control, salvage, contain, and embrace to describe the endings at random. These are the names of the soundtracks related to each ending. The community uses many different names to refer to the endings, such as the names of the characters who entered the pods, the names of the factions that won, or even the names of the achievements related to unlocking them. Brave New World. Korshunov sacrificed himself so that humanity could have a new future, free of doubt and the zone. Today never ends. S.T.A.L.K.E.R went into the pod to rid the Zone of Darkness. She will never be free. STRELOK went into the pod to protect her. Always. Project Y. Go through with Kaimanov's initial plan. Personally, I shall use the 4 words from the OST because I think they represent best what each ending means for the zone. Control, salvage, contain, embrace. Anyway, let's check out how to unlock each one. In order to get the control ending, Skif only needs to join Korshunov at the TCP, making it the easiest to obtain. For the salvage ending, Skif has to join S.T.A.L.K.E.R at Orbita and deny Korshunov at the TCP. To unlock one of the other 2 endings, Skif needs to deny both S.T.A.L.K.E.R and Korshunov, then turn against STRELOK by sparing Dr. for the Embrace ending, or kill Dr. on STRELOK's orders for the Contain ending. In every path, the player will go to Pripyat, raid the Foundation, then reach the generators and fight their way to Lab X7. However, the fates of the different characters are drastically different depending on the ending. We'll take a look at all of them. In the Ward path, Skif joins Korshunov and Dalin at the Foundation. The head of S.T.A.L.K.E.R then betrays the regulatory board by opening the doors for a Spark assault squad accompanied by Richter. Thus, the player is forced to kill Richter, and has the choice to eliminate Dalin by Skif's hand or let Korshunov do it. Afterwards, the control unit of the Psi Consciousness representative is tossed away and replaced by a new unit that allows Agatha to take over the X network. Then Agatha teleports Skif to the Dead Valley where he makes his way to the generators. There he has to end STRELOK's life to allow the other Ward forces to teleport in the facility, and later eliminates S.T.A.L.K.E.R as well in the Neuro Laboratory. With all the enemies dealt with, Korshunov steps into the remaining pod, serving as a mediator between the Noosphere and the true person in control, Agatha. Being a mediator is only possible for people who have Class 5 Psi protection, the highest level of resistance, which is why S.T.A.L.K.E.R had previously experimented on Warden soldiers in order to artificially create Class 5 Psi protection for the Colonel. They succeeded at the cost of many lives, allowing for Korshunov to handle the Psi connection alone and bringing Agatha the power she wanted. In the Spark path, Dalin will also betray the Ward at the Foundation, opening the doors for Skif and Richter so that they can fight Korshunov. Together they will manage to kill him, but Richter sacrifices himself for Skif during the struggle. Afterwards, the control unit of Psi Consciousness is reactivated, allowing its representative, Valentin Dalin, to reunite with his son Dmitro. Then Valentin teleports Skif to the Dead Valley where he makes his way to the generators. There he has to deal with STRELOK as well, to allow S.T.A.L.K.E.R and the Sparkers to teleport in the facility. Finally, S.T.A.L.K.E.R will step into the pod, using his Class 5 Psi protection to serve as a mediator for Psi Consciousness. Unlike Korshunov, it seems S.T.A.L.K.E.'s Psi resistance is natural to him, or maybe he acquired it a long time ago in unknown circumstances. In any case, he'll handle the connection to the Noosphere for the representative and his colleagues. In the last path, Skif will raid the Foundation alongside Degtyaryov. Once again Dalin opens the door and together they kill Korshunov. Afterwards, Dmitro decides that his father is only a hologram, so he destroys the control unit alongside the Foundation's variometer, but he's thrown away by the explosion. Dalin's exact fate isn't discussed later, so it is very likely that he died here and there. Richter and Degi survived, though. Then STRELOK will ask Skif to assassinate the Doctor, and Richter will guide him there. If Skif obeys the order, Kaimanov dies. But if Skif spares the old man, he will step outside during an emission and disappear, his true fate unknown, and leave behind fragments of his secrets for our hero to carry out Project Y. Either way, Richter then takes us to STRELOK at the Red Fortress, though our guide friend ends up wounded, so he will stay behind. In case Kaimanov was murdered, the men teleport to the generators, where Skif finishes off S.T.A.L.K.E.R and STRELOK steps into the pod. He is able to achieve a meaningful connection to the noosphere not because he's a mediator like the others, but thanks to the power of the Heart of Chernobyl, a unique artifact capable of replacing the variometer once damaged by Kaimanov on that fateful day the zone was born. In case the Doctor was left alive, Skif will have to kill an angry STRELOK, followed by a crazy S.T.A.L.K.E.R. Finally, he'll step into the pod himself, using the Heart of Chernobyl he took from STRELOK's dead body. So, now it is time to turn our attention to the ending cutscenes themselves. Let us begin with the Control ending.
All this technology, pods, wires, antennas, and all that jazz. Just so you can question less and serve more.
It is pretty ironic for Korshunov to say that when he's been serving the regulatory board without question for all these years. Although they didn't need any technology to ensure the loyalty of the world. At least, not yet.
A tuft of hair from a mangy old bear.
This expression means that even someone that would appear worthless on the surface can bring something useful. In the case of Korshunov, he is well past his prime and now a broken man, but he still has one valuable thing to give. His ability to play the mediator between the noosphere and Agatha, due to his class 5 Psi protection. This ability is concentrated on the cartridge he handed to Skif, which contains the Colonel's Psi signature.
Thanks for the crutches, you old bastard.
Pod number 8 belongs to Valentin Dalin, the leader of Psi consciousness. I believe the Colonel here is referencing the fact that Dalin was the one who designed the 4th generation of exoskeletons, paving the way for the creation of the one worn by Korshunov right now, and without which he would never have gone this far due to the injury he received at the Duga.
Alright. Go to the consoles.
As Skif heads to the consoles, Korshunov turns on the power via the switch on the wall.
Look for Octa. Set it to initial mode.
Octa is the name of the machine composed of the 8 pods, designed and built by Valentin Dalin after Kaimanov's idea to connect several people to the noosphere at once.
Now, service exposed mode.
Of course, after STRELOK's little intervention in 2012, only Kaimanov's empty pod remains functional.
Insert the cartridge.
Only one spot left, where Kaimanov's cartridge should have gone. Also, it's pretty cool to see the exoskeleton standing like that.
One last step for a spent man. One giant leap for mankind. Do it.
Here we go. I don't know if you've noticed, but the design of these pods is a little bit different from the one in X-15 under Orbita. I guess Dalin didn't simply want to copy Kaimanov's work, and he may have made some improvements to it as well. The initial pod was just a prototype after all. After Korshunov connects to the noosphere, Skif passes out and has flashbacks of some important moments from his journey.
Oh, yes.
To the victor go the spoils.
So it's up to you to decide his fate.
I'm glad to hear that.
To ruin our little party.
When he wakes up, Agatha will be here along with her guards.
You're back. Excellent. Help him up.
Nope, Skif does things his own way.
The means justify the end. Thanks to you, we're going to live in a new world with a bright future. I keep my promises. You can stay with us. Or...
It's true, Skif wanted a new home, and he got it. But that's only part of it.
You look tired. I'll show you out.
I mean, of course he's tired after going through all the endgame fights. It is interesting to see how fast Agatha and her men managed to get there, but I guess that valley didn't pose any more danger after Korshunov took control.
Striking, isn't it? Someone has to keep an eye on all of this. And Colonel Martininka does have a nice ring to it. That's your bird. Do think about it.
Mm-hmm.
Condor 1, whatever this stalker wants, this stalker gets.
Skif didn't give an answer to Agatha right away, and he didn't straight up refuse either, so there is the possibility he may become the new Warden Colonel after this ending. But first, he's got to check out his new home.
Where to, boss?
Home.
We can see that the anomalous instability surrounding the Dead Valley has been cleared up. There are no more emissions and storming weather. Right now we should focus on the generators. They were turned into a specific mode, and the anomalous zone started to disappear, just as it was promised. At this point I need to mention that many other generator facilities were built in secret all around the world by the regulatory board, so it is possible they all went online at the same time. But more on that later. We then see Skif opening his gift box to find the keys of his new home. However, he won't just be living in a new house from now. He'll be living in a brand new world. Indeed, his vision is actually being broadcasted on a sinister screen above the Octa, along with the sights of many other stalkers from the zone.
People do not wish for the pursuit of happiness. They need their happiness here and now.
According to Korshunov, the Project Fiber technology at the Troposphere Comms station allowed the ward to spy on all sea consciousness agents who remained within the perimeter of the zone. Now, with the generators at their disposal, it seems they managed to extend this ability to all the people in the zone, agents or not, including Skif and even what looks like Sidorovich. Moreover, with their network of generators all around the world, this surveillance could easily be extended to the entire planet. Speaking of the other generators, it is obvious they are a crucial piece of the regulatory board's plans for global domination. Their existence was discovered by the legendary journalist, but also straight up confirmed by Agatha herself.
We can activate the network of research centers we've set up across the mainland. These centers are equipped with more advanced generator facilities.
While their purpose is not directly stated, my theory is that they will allow the regulatory board to achieve almost total control over the noosphere, and thus over all of mankind. My assumption is that they could not accomplish this as long as the zone existed, because the zone is a crack in the Earth's noosphere that needed to be repaired first. Hence why securing the generators at the zone's center remained their top priority. That being said, what can we expect to happen to the world of S.T.A.L.K.E.R after this ending comes through? Well, Agatha said the regulatory board was interested in anything that can propel humanity forward along the path of evolution, whatever that means. For optimistic people like Dmitro Darlin, this represented the opportunity to develop technological advancements beyond our wildest imagination, such as infinite sources of energy or ways to explore deep space and the universe. However, for people I would call more down to earth, the board's philosophy was all about power and control. I could very well see a technologically advanced but dystopian future, where free will has been removed because, as Agatha seemed to imply, if you can provide people with what they believe is happiness here and now, they will be ready to accept anything. It's just my opinion though. In reality, it is hard to predict what will really happen due to the limited information at our disposal. There is also the possibility evoked by Kaimanov that Agatha cannot control the anomalous energy in the long run, resulting in another disaster. Overall, this ending is not too complicated to understand because of how straightforward it is, but the mysterious nature of the regulatory board and their true motives make it difficult to predict what might happen next. Make sure to share your own ideas in the comments below. Moving on to the Salvage ending.
Wow. That's it? Stairway to heaven.
Scar seems pretty excited to fulfill his destiny, but this was not the case back at the Neuro Laboratory. When he read his file and discovered he had been an agent all along, Scar had some doubts about going through with this, as if his original personality was trying to resurface from being buried deep under all the brainwashing. In the end, Skif convinced him it was too late to back down. Scar's tragedy is that he never had a choice.
Flip that switch.
In this timeline, Skif is the one turning on the power instead of Korshunov. This switch will be used in every one of the endings, you'll see. And here is Kaimanov's pod.
Very nice. My entrance ticket. Come on.
Now Scar is the one who's gonna use the console instead of Skif.
Looking for Octa. Oh, there.
The rest of the procedure is going to be identical though.
Service exposed. Ah, I got it. Thank you.
You are welcome, Scar. Now it's time to insert your cartridge.
I'm going to go there. You're going to stay here. On my command, push that thing up. Don't let me down.
Off with the PDA.
Yeah. Ready?
Ready.
Go!
Here goes. I've always wondered what kind of liquid is used to fill these tanks. Most likely it is a fluid designed to keep the users alive, allowing them to breathe and feeding them all the necessary nutrients. But what about losing muscle mass through complete lack of physical exercise? Well, since the process of connecting your mind to the noosphere is apparently irreversible, I guess what happens to your body doesn't really matter, especially if your spirit outlives it in the form of subtle matter. Then again, they did not know about that before STRELOK intervened, so... Anyway, this rocket is about to take S.T.A.L.K.E.R into the noosphere, so brace yourselves. Here we clearly see that the screens have turned on, but they are all just statics. Now Skif will find himself in the Shining Zone. The beginning of the scene is obviously a reference to the canon ending of Shadow of Chernobyl, when STRELOK lied onto the grass and the dragonfly flew around him. You see, after STRELOK gunned down Sea Consciousness, he too saw the Shining Zone, at least a glimpse of it for a short moment, but he quickly came to believe it to only be an illusion. It's time to see what happens in the case of Skif. Somehow he's been transported in the Lesser Zone, next to Zalesia, and the poppy field seems to have extended to cover the entire area. The sun shines a beautiful light, and it feels so real, warm, peaceful and nice. Sure, it's different from the oasis we've seen before, but it is actually even better. The dangers of the zone seem gone, and the birds are chanting. So, why not get rid of the mask and enjoy the moment? Unfortunately, Skif's face remains hidden to us, so we cannot look at that handsome devil. This particular scene was teased to us in the summer of 2024, and back then we correctly predicted it belonged to one of the endings. There it is, Zalesia. In a way, the village became Skif's home within the zone for being his first stalker camp, just like Rookie Village is home to all the stalkers who began their journey there. And would you look who's here?
Richter, is this all real?
Reality is whatever you think is real.
Really? A bit of a dangerous philosophy if you ask me.
Oh God, he plays so well.
Finally, a superstar.
I still can hear, can see, and feel. Am I really here?
Well, who's talking then?
Many stalkers owe you their lives. Thank you.
Come on, man, spill it.
Flashbacks time.
Who the fuck are you?
The first ride on the Ferris wheel.
And me, Scar. Don't worry, this time you won't have to.
Just a guide. I was only showing the way, right?
Whole time. It's ours now.
Father.
Poor Scar.
And so Skif started to narrate his intricate adventures, and everything seems to have ended perfectly. An eternal spring. Or did it really?
We're all to stand upon the sea. Through death, through darkness thus. I choose the nets that swallow me. This mortal coil failed us.
So the Shining was all a lie? Not necessarily, but it is pretty clear something went horribly wrong with the procedure. Before jumping to conclusions, let's assess what the twist reveals. Skif did get transported to the Shining Zone, at least inside of his mind, but his physical body remains in the real zone. Meanwhile, the other stalkers are either lying dead or in a state of zombification. We notice that the wild dogs are roaming the area without trying to attack them, which makes sense because mutants are not hostile towards zombified stalkers. Does this correspond to what was promised about the Shining? To answer that question, we need to remind ourselves how the Shining was described throughout the game. According to the Sea Consciousness representative, the Shining aimed at achieving eternal life for all humans in the form of subtle matter stored within the noosphere. This plan was to take place into two phases. Firstly, it would only affect the people present within the perimeter, including all the stalkers who perished in the anomalous zone between its birth and now, because their subtle matter images were already preserved in the noosphere. This means that all the deaths that occurred in the zone since June 10, 2006 would be reverted, or more precisely, the minds of the people who died would be preserved forever, along with the minds of all the inhabitants of the zone who are still alive right now. Secondly, the process was to be expanded to the entire world, most probably with the help of the multiple generator facilities built all around the planet. In this case, only the humans alive at this moment would benefit from this form of immortality. That's pretty much it. The details of how this was to happen exactly, what becomes of the people's physical bodies, and what eternal life within the noosphere is supposed to look like were never really discussed. Therefore, it is possible that our ending actually did exactly what was promised. Perhaps everyone has turned into zombies, but their subtle matter images were successfully preserved, including those of already deceased stalkers. The fact that Scar, Richter, Star, and Mugwort are all with Skif does seem to support that fact. However, the ending does raise some important questions. Is the Shining Zone only seen by Skif, like a personal dream of his, or were the minds of the other stalkers actually saved as well? If so, does every person live in its own version of the Shining Zone, or does everyone share the same? What happens when the physical body of a stalker, Skif included, gets destroyed? Is this Shining actually gonna be expanded to the whole world, or will it remain contained within the zone? The answers are far from obvious, but the tone of the twist is clearly meant to show the Shining in a pretty negative way, so I think it is safe to assume that not everything went according to plan. This could be for multiple reasons. Perhaps Sea Consciousness messed up something, or was simply wrong all along. Maybe subtle matter never existed in the first place, and all of it was a Psi illusion just like STRELOK had warned us about. Whatever it is, there is at least one thing we can take away from this ending. When Scar stepped into the pod, something did happen. People got zombified, Skif's mind entered the Shining Zone, and who knows what else. Considering Scar is only a mediator, and thus not meant to affect the anomalous energy on his own, it must mean that something, possibly Sea Consciousness or whatever was left of it, did in fact use Scar's Class 5 Psi protection to initiate these changes within the zone. Make of that what you will. To wrap up this pretty confusing ending, I'd like to present you with a pretty ironic piece of foreshadowing that came to my attention.
What do you want to achieve?
Zombies!
Now it's time to contain the zone with our boy STRELOK. STRELOK doesn't have class 5 Psi protection, so he needs to use the Heart of Chernobyl to achieve the connection to the noosphere.
Fallen cog returns to the machine.
The representative once told STRELOK he was a cog that fell from the machine. Well, now we know who got the last laugh. STRELOK just replaced the damaged variometer with the Heart of Chernobyl. Skif doesn't look directly because he isn't aware of this detail in that timeline, but we'll see the process much better when he'll be the one to perform it. Turning on the power now. And then, let's take a look at Kaimanov's pod.
It seems that this is the only way to unveil the zone's real secret. The one you've been trying to figure out. Come.
These were the words spoken by Kaimanov to STRELOK before he raided the CNPP back in 2012.
Hope the old man wasn't lying.
I like that STRELOK's actions reflect his loner personality. He doesn't ask Skif for any help and operates all the controls by himself, showing that he is used to doing things on his own. The only thing he will actually demand is for Skif to launch the pod, since he cannot do it on his own while stepping inside. But first, here goes the cartridge.
You. Slide that thing back up. On my signal.
Alright, will do. I'm not entirely sure what pieces of equipment he is throwing away here. I tried to take a closer look at the video but could not make it out. I don't really think it matters that much anyway.
Push it.
Well, here we go. You know, I've been wondering why Kaimanov's pod is marked number 1. Shouldn't Dalin's be number 1 since he was the leader of the contact group? For some reason Dalin's pod is actually number 8. Not that it really changes anything though. As a longtime S.T.A.L.K.E.R fan, this has to be one of the coolest moments in the game, seeing STRELOK finally stepping into that pod. He was actually proposed by C Consciousness to enter that pod almost a decade ago, to help strengthen them and stop the growth of the zone, but he refused and gunned down the other pods instead. That decision haunted him for years, since he didn't know if it was the correct one, but now he is sure of what to do. STRELOK has come back to that very place in order to close down his whole arc as the most legendary stalker in the zone. Perhaps now Skif can claim the spot of the top-ranked stalker. And of course, it's flashbacks time.
Cannot see. I want.
Cheers, friends here.
Hello, Skif. It's the Dark One.
Skif has come to his senses and he's headed towards the exit, the very same we saw in the ward ending.
Attention! Crossing strictly prohibited.
Oh, by the way, it seems Skif is canonically using a Vintar gun in this timeline. Time to get out of here. The sun rays suggest the anomalous storm in the Dead Valley has subsided. Well, that can't be good. The monolith is still active. No way around it.
Lower your weapons. Let the stalker pass.
So here it is revealed that not only are the monolithians still around,
Anyone attempting to enter or leave, eliminated on the spot.
but they are actually obeying the orders of STRELOK. This begs the question, what happened to the monolith in the other endings? They were probably disbanded, yet here they are being used by STRELOK to achieve his vision for the zone. The monolithians being controlled by whoever is connected to the Noosphere is new, since they relied on the Wish Granter device previously, but it's not surprising either. Skif has walked all the way to the Lesser Zone to witness the event for himself. Indeed, STRELOK intends to focus on the zone's borders. We see the IPSF checkpoint under a surge of anomalous activity, and the guards start to panic and abandon their positions. Yes, we can see freedomers among the soldiers. It's a mistake made by the devs. And now we finally understand what STRELOK's plan was all along.
Attention! All exclusion zone checkpoints are closed. Crossing the zone's perimeter is strictly prohibited. Anyone attempting to enter or leave the zone will be eliminated on the spot. Attention! Anyone attempting to enter or leave the zone will be eliminated on the spot. I will protect her. Always.
Back in Call of Pripyat, STRELOK declared that his plan was to destroy the zone, and he wished to share all his knowledge with the government in order to make it happen. So how is it that in Heart of Chernobyl, his desire has completely shifted, and he now wishes to protect the zone instead of destroying it? While some claim this is due to bad writing by the developers, I beg to differ, for all the explanations are given in the game if you know where to look. According to STRELOK's own words, he initially believed that the zone itself was responsible for all his troubles, mainly his brainwashing and all the horrors associated with Project X. However, he later came to realize that the zone had nothing to do with it, and those responsible were the organizations seeking to exploit the anomalous energy, the Regulatory Board, Sea Consciousness, their respective allies, and even Kaimanov. Thus he decided to protect the zone from these people by eliminating them. This change of perspective actually makes sense when you consider that STRELOK worked as a chief scientific consultant for S.T.A.L.K.E.R between 2012 and 2017. There he discovered the wrongdoings of the Institute for the benefit of Agatha, and also learned more about the origins of Project X. Besides, STRELOK was still suffering from his brainwashing at the time of Call of Pripyat, so his mind wasn't entirely clear, explaining why he had a different plan back then. Indeed, he mentioned not being sure what to believe after his trip to the center of the zone. Almost 10 years later, his brainwashing had been completely wiped out, seeing that he's able to withstand the sinister screens without a flinch, while any other agent would be folded in an instant. And now, with a clear mind, STRELOK was able to see his own truth without any doubts, and achieve protection of the zone with the help of Skif. This protection is actually a complete lockdown, hence the name of the ending, Contain. It appears this containment is achieved via the use of anomalous forces at the zone's borders, and possibly through the direct involvement of the monolithians who have fallen under STRELOK's influence. By preventing anyone from crossing the perimeter on both sides, STRELOK intends to stop humans from exploiting the zone further. Only the real stalkers would remain inside the zone, while greedy corporations, such as the Regulatory Board, will be denied access. Now, it is unclear how efficiently these rules will be enforced, and what the consequences on the zone and the outside world will be. It is very much possible that STRELOK's newfound powers could turn out insufficient to keep the perimeter perfectly tight, and some individuals may still succeed in breaking in or out. On the other hand, a successful lockdown of the zone would mean a complete stop to the flow of supplies coming in through traders, be it weapons, ammo, equipment, medicine and even food, eventually leading to shortages and much more difficult living conditions for all the people trapped inside the zone, including Skif. Perhaps the gradual weakening and possible extinction of all stalkers is part of STRELOK's further plans, but I have a feeling the factions will not go down without a fight. As for Skif, he has found his new home into the zone, although it is hard to tell if he is actually satisfied with that outcome. Overall, this ending leaves quite a lot of opportunities for a continuation, and it would be interesting to see how things could go down from there. But before we speculate any further, we have the Embrace path to take a look at. Alright, let us follow Kaimanov's instructions. Firstly, Skif visits a special room in the lab to capture his own Psi signature on a cartridge. This is something that the characters destined to step into the pod had to do as well in the other endings, but Skif was busy dealing with other stuff to witness it. Then go to Kaimanov's office and toggle the operating mode from manual to automatic. This will allow the pod to launch automatically when Skif enters it, without requiring anyone else to operate the console like we saw in the previous endings. This system was probably added by Kaimanov himself, considering it is only fitted on his pod, and the switch is located inside his office. Skif found out about it from the Octa launch instructions also found in Kaimanov's room, so it seems the old man had actually planned for this specific scenario. Anyway, Skif will activate the power, then replace the variometer damaged by Kaimanov on the day the zone was born with the Heart of Chernobyl he acquired from STRELOK's corpse. We can see that the hoops around the variometer were completely destroyed, giving credibility to the theory that Kaimanov's intervention did result in the creation of the anomalous zone. The Heart of Chernobyl is carried in a similar case to the Alpha artifact. Here goes. Then we go to the consoles, setting primary mode to the initial position. Waiting for the pod to become operational. Next, pressing the button for Surface Expose mode, where the pod assumes vertical position. Inserting Psi signature cartridge now. They say this song was made by the Zone for Skif. Well, it does fit. And now it is time. Back to where it all began, Skif's apartment, on a cold night in the winter of 2021. Something wrong in the kitchen.
What?
No power, huh? We need to check what's going on in here. An anomaly, isn't it? Back then, Skif hated the zone for what it did to his home, but now he understands it was just desperately calling for his help. And it left him a gift that would send him down the entire rabbit hole, an alpha artifact. It's flashbacks time.
Show me what you found.
I am blind, but it is you who cannot see for what it truly is. One of the pods was left.
You're not worthy.
Get inside!
After Skif brought back its power to the Alpha, it was eventually stolen by the Monolithians and brought by Faust to the Duga, in the very control room we see right now. It seems the installation was taken back by the IPSF, and scientists are currently performing some sort of experiment involving the artifact.
The greatest temptation is trying to control something we do not fully understand. But what do we do when faced with the truly inexplicable? Some tear it up to make souvenirs. Others keep it chained up inside a perimeter cage. Perhaps all the zone really needs is our compassion.
Duga, Control Center, what's going on over there? We've got anomalous activity at all our facilities. Duga, respond!
Perhaps the time has come to let her choose her own destiny.
We're receiving numerous reports of unidentified anomalous entities. Not approach or make contact with the anomalous objects.
So the experiment went out of control, resulting in anomalous activity appearing all around the globe. Using the Alpha artifact at the Duga was what Faust tried to achieve before Skif stopped him, though we later learned it was actually the last step of Kaimanov's secret Project Y. Speaking of which, it seems the Doctor is actually still alive. We thought he might have died when he stayed outside during the mission, yet there he is. However, don't be fooled, for this entire sequence seems to take place inside the subtle world, which is made out of subtle matter. You'll see why in just a moment. Now that a certain connection between Faust and Doctor has been established through the fact they both wanted the same thing, we can let the shocking reveal unfold.
There is nothing you can keep secret that will not come into the open. It's just a matter of time.
Here Faust has pupils in his eyes, just like he had when Skif talked to him on top of the Duga. This indicates we are in the subtle world, and this is all an illusion, although this illusion is not entirely fabricated like artificial Psi-emissions, but it is instead rooted in the reality of the noosphere.
I used to serve the monolith blindly, until she opened my eyes. To keep life's adventure going, one must embrace freedom. Such is the gift of the zone.
So, what the hell was that? This is the ending that has stumped player the most ever since release. What can we make out of it? Firstly, there is the debate whether or not Faust was disguised as Kaimanov all along. I talked about this topic extensively in another video, with the conclusion being that we do not have enough information to be 100% sure of what to believe. It is well established that there is a connection between the two characters that culminates in the desire to activate the Alpha artifact at the Duga, yet the evidence to paint Faust as an impersonator of Doctor is still lacking. Considering the last scene takes place in the subtle world, I think it is more likely that their link is more of a philosophical one, since they eventually shared the same idea of embracing the zone and letting it free. Perhaps this similar vision resulted in their minds merging within the noosphere after their respective demises. Secondly, we have to go back to the previous scene, the experiment at the Duga. As mentioned previously, this is tied to the ultimate step of Project Y. Duga comes center, replace the microchips with external action modules. It sounds like Kaimanov's plan involved the modification of the Duga that, when paired with the power of the Alpha artifact, would result in a surge of anomalous activity. According to the news reports, anomalies started to pop up all around the world, as illustrated by the glowing spots on the map and light bulbs wrapped around the globe on Kaimanov's desk. Some people claim these hotspots are brand new anomalous zones, but I think this is a bit of a stretch. The ending does not show that. It only reports anomalous activity, which could very well be similar to what Skif experienced when his apartment was destroyed. We have no idea of the actual scale of these anomalies, nor if they are even going to last, so I suggest not to get too carried away just yet. Yes, this is clearly a huge event that was planned by Kaimanov all along, but its full consequences and the aftermath are unknown to us at the moment. Thirdly, what about Skif? He connected to the noosphere and it is implied he had a hand in this, though we don't directly see how his involvement impacted the Duga experiment. After all, the description of Project Y does not include any mention of using the last pod to reach its goal. Yet the ending achievement claims Skif went through with Kaimanov's initial plan, not to mention the Doctor clearly provided for the eventuality of using his pod by installing the automatic launch system. Could it be that Project Y is more complicated than what appears on the surface? Most certainly yes. Kaimanov reframed Sea Consciousness agents to give them new orders to follow, and according to Korshunov, some of these agents went outside the zone to carry out unknown missions. Moreover, it is speculated that the sources for the anomalous hotspots that spawned during the Duga experiments are actually the multiple generator facilities built by the regulatory board all over the world. The main theory is that Skif used his powers of the noosphere to hijack these generator installations, possibly with the help of Kaimanov's agents in the mainland, allowing them to connect to the X network via the Duga and resulting in the anomalous energy breaking free. While all of this is possible, I must remind you that it remains speculation. We don't see what happens to Skif after he stepped into the pod, nor what happens to the zone itself. Therefore, this ending leaves a lot of things up in the air, making it the best candidate to become the true ending. Indeed, I want to close down the video by talking about the chances for each ending to become canon. A good starting point is to take a look at the popularity of the endings according to the players' choices recorded on Steam. At the time of writing this script, Contain was unlocked by 9.2% of the players, Embrace by 7.7%, Control by 6.2%, and Salvage by only 2.5%. This suggests that players' trust went towards STRELOK first, then Kaimanov, then Korshunov, and finally S.T.A.L.K.E.R. I'm not surprised by the results of the Salvage ending, considering S.T.A.L.K.E.R is pretty crazy and the Shining Zone is quite difficult to believe in. Besides, it leaves very little room for follow-up S.T.A.L.K.E.R stories, considering everyone in the zone seems to have been brainwashed. As for the Control ending, I understand why some players chose to destroy the zone, but it also completely shatters the idea of a continuation of the series. I mean, how do you make a S.T.A.L.K.E.R game without the zone? So that leaves us with only two realistic options: contain or embrace. I believe both have pretty nice perspectives to offer. On one hand, STRELOK taking over feels like a nice development for his legend as a character, and introduces an interesting dynamic for the future of the zone. His lockdown of the perimeter could lead to a desperate situation for the stalkers inside, since they would not get supplies from the mainland anymore. And I could very well see plenty of scenarios for a sequel. People from both sides of the border would try to find ways to pass through, while S.T.A.L.K.E.R factions would either fight to the death for the few remaining resources within the zone, or make an alliance to march on the generators and take on STRELOK head-on. On the other hand, Project Y seems like the true ending of the game for a few reasons. Firstly, the main protagonist, Skif, is the one entering the pod, bringing a satisfying end to his journey. Secondly, this is the only ending where the end title OST actually plays, the very same music that was used for the launch trailer of the game. Thirdly, the zone supposedly gets its freedom, setting up nicely for a potential sequel. Last but not least, this is the only ending where the player and Skif learn the full truth about the Heart of Chernobyl, the very artifact that gave its name to the game. As we've previously discussed, the ending remains ambiguous on the consequences of Project Y, allowing GSC a lot of room to prepare for a continuation. Want to make something S.T.A.L.K.E.R related in a new place in the world? The anomalies spawning everywhere got you covered. On the contrary, want to backpedal on the idea of a global zone? Just to say the anomalous manifestations were temporary, and everything eventually subsided. Of course, there is a lot more that could be said, but this video is already pretty long, so I suggest we continue the discussion in the comments. What do you think about all of this? Make sure to let me know. In the meantime, I thank you for watching, and I wish you good hunting, Stalkers.